Well, let's talk a bit about the mental health side of things as the specific role of mental health and of dealing with recovery. I think it would be very, very helpful for people to understand what that day-to-day is and what that's like.
Well,
and
I can speak
some advice. I mean,
I'm happy to. Let me address this. I think more so from the standpoint of somebody who has struggled and been in recovery myself, and what has worked for me, because ultimately that's probably the most powerful experience that I can share, is what has worked for me. And I won't put on my counselor cap right now. And again, going back to what Rabbi Taub talks about in the book God of Our Understanding, for me the key component to getting sober and staying sober is the spiritual component. It's no secret that 12-step recovery, while not 100% successful, is probably the most successful recovery program for any kind of addiction.
It's got a pretty good batting average.
It's got a pretty good batting average. The reason I believe for that is because it's a spiritual program. If what I had was only a mental health issue, if addiction was only a mental health issue, I could go and I could sit on a therapist's couch for a couple thousand hours and I would probably be cured.
I thought you were going to say dollars, but that's about the same.
A couple $1,000 or a couple thousand hours, however you want to, however you want to spin that. And I could probably, be cured. If what I had was only a physical illness, I could go detox 72 hours later, walk out of the detox, and I would be cured. But it has a physical component, it has a mental component, but first and foremost, what I have is I have a spiritual illness that requires a spiritual solution. So I have to address the physical, I have to address the mental, but I also have to address that spiritual component. That, as we talk, like what we say in recovery, that God-shaped hole that's in me that I keep trying to fill with alcohol or with drugs or with pornography or with gambling or with any of the other myriad ways I try to fill this hole that really can only be filled with God. It can only be filled on a spiritual basis. And until I find that, because here's the thing. Most alcoholics and addicts, you hear this all the time in the rooms. You hear phrases like, I'm not comfortable in my own skin, even as a child. When I was a kid, I would walk into a room full of people and I would feel like I was a stranger, even if they were family members. We yearn for some kind of connection, some kind of spiritual connection. And for a lot of us, for me, I know, any kind of social situation was extremely awkward. And then all of a sudden I take that shot, or I have a beer, and about 2 beers in, all of a sudden all that awkwardness is gone. And all of a sudden I feel alive. And I feel like, oh, okay, I'm actually a part of the human race. Like I can connect with you. I can talk to you. I'm all of a sudden I can walk up to that woman and speak to her. All these things that I can't do when I'm sober and that I can't feel when I'm sober. I get a couple of drinks in me and it works. That's the problem. It does work. See, alcohol and drugs and addiction, it's not the problem. It's the solution to the problem.
So it's about finding a different solution.
It's about finding a different solution. The real solution, the only real solution, because they mimic very, very well the spiritual connection that I really need, and that I really need, that I'm really craving. That if I don't replace it with the real thing, with a real connection to a higher power, then I'm probably doomed to failure.
You could be using scissors to cut your grass and it will work, but your arm will hurt, so use a lawnmower.
Right.
That's kind of the idea, finding the right solution.
Exactly.
And
exactly.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that you see with friends, especially as you get older, like that they struggle with, and then there's also, I think, people have that balance of trying to work out, and this anyone who doesn't think about this, I think, is probably being a bit dishonest to themselves, but working out, okay, what is my limit, and can I drink, or is it too much, or you know, when you go out, like I drink. Yeah. You'll see on Friday night I like to have a bit of a bit of a drink or two, but you definitely have to, if you go over the line, have that perspective of have you gone over the line, and where is that line for you, and really have a perspective, or it can spiral. But that point which I find really interesting is that you've brought up that it's a solution to a problem and a hole, and I think that's where, and I could be wrong, so please tell me if I'm wrong, but this is what I'm taking out of it. That's where possibly the difference is in having the disease or just liking a bit of a drink, is that it's not really trying to fix a hole. It's not trying to fix a problem. It's fun. And you know, a few drinks are a good time, kind of a thing.
I don't know, because I'm not a normal drinker.
Right.
But if I had to guess, I'd say you're probably on the right track. It somehow, like on a deep soul level, feels differently for somebody who's not an addict.
It sounds like that's what it sounds like. Like I'm having the discussion.
Yeah.
But that's what it sounds like. It's a difference in kind of perspective of having a drink.
Right. I mean, we have criteria that when somebody comes in. When I was working as a counselor, we would have to determine whether or not they actually fit the criteria for our services. And we have a whole list of questions and you can quantify it. But the bottom line is, really, it's up to the individual. See, that's the thing. It's a disease whose the first symptom of this disease is, tell me I don't have a disease. So it's very, very tricky.
Exactly.
It's very tricky. And it's a disease that ultimately only I can admit to having or not.
Yeah, all the interventions in the world at the end of the day.
At the end of the day, it's, until the person is ready to admit to themselves, that's the first step. We admitted to ourselves that we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives have become unmanageable. Until I'm ready to get to that first step, that I admit to myself that I'm an alcoholic, that I have a problem. There isn't anything that anybody can tell me. Now, I was given a very, very key piece of information and piece of advice about 3 months before I finally hit bottom from one of the original members of Tower of Power, who had been in recovery at that point for close to 20 years. And I remember going up to him backstage and asking him point blank. See, I'd been in the band for 7 years at that point, and they never once pulled me and grabbed me and said, Mike, you got a problem, you got to fix it, you're an alcoholic. None of that. They practiced one of the principles of 12-step recovery is attraction, not promotion.
Right.
Okay. So while the first 7 years I was on the band, while my life was gradually getting worse and worse and worse, I saw their lives getting better and better and better. So about 3 months before I finally hit bottom, I remember grabbing one of the original members who had been, like I said, been in recovery for many years. And he actually was the one who took me to my first meeting 3 months later when I finally hit bottom. It was just the two of us backstage. And I looked him in the eye and I just asked him point blank, am I an alcoholic? And he looked at me and he says, here's the thing, Mike. I can't tell you whether you're an alcoholic or not. That's something only you can figure out for yourself. But I can tell you this. People who are not alcoholic or who are not addicts, who are normal, never ask themselves that question. And that's really when the light bulb went off, because I'd been asking myself that question for a long time.
Right.
At least a decade. Am I an alcoholic? Do I have a problem? And turns out I did. The old Yiddish saying, "Shikar is a goy." Jews aren't drunks. Jews don't have this problem. Well, it turns out we do.
Oh, we definitely.
It's an equal opportunity disease.
There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of alcohol, especially in the culture and in the system. I mean, almost every festival revolves around some sort of drinking, and it's never meant to be excess, but that does come with it, and that is a factor.